Na 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 live stream. Hi everybody. Actually, I did that wrong. I should have done that to the tune of the new movie. Na 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 live stream. It doesn't quite work with the tone of the new movie. But anyway, hi everybody. It's Batman Day. I got my Batman shirt. I got my Batman hanging out with me on the mic. Glad you all could make it. Thanks for joining me. As always, I will be answering questions that were submitted ahead of time by my Patreon patrons and my channel members first. So if you have something for me in the live chat, please hang on to it until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I can devote my full attention to the live chat. One of my beautiful, wonderful patrons was thoughtful enough and had the foresight to ask me about the new Batman movie, which I did see today. I saw it this morning. So when we get to that question, I will give you all my review of the new Batman movie. Spoiler free, of course. But we'll get to that when I get to that question in the patron member questions. So why don't we, Pedro Noguera, hey, Vengeance. Hey, Vengeance. No spoilers, please. Anyway, so let's get started right away with the patron and member questions. And the first question comes from Matt, who says, of the Discovery crew, which do you want to have an expanded background / episodes centered around? Personally, I hope Jet Reno or Owoshikun get expanded more. Those are both really good choices. Also, what's his name? The Saurian dude, Linus. Linus, just because he has such the character design is so interesting. Or I don't even know what their actual character name is, but the one that was referred to by Captain Pike in that blooper from season 2 as Octopus Head. I would love to see an Octopus Head episode. It's Octopus Head. That would be great. But even more so than having like an episode centered around them, I would love to see, character like Linus or like Reese or Bryce or some of the other background characters or supporting characters just have a little bit more characterization in episodes as the show goes along. Like, you don't necessarily need to have a Bryce centered episode or a Reese centered episode in order to develop those characters. Just give them a little bit more to do in the episodes as the show goes on, other than randomly blurting out pieces of their backstory, which has become really, for me, this season, especially in Discovery, has become kind of a running joke. It seems like the last 3 or 4 episodes at least, and most of the episodes of this season, now that I think about it, there has been a scene of at least one of the underdeveloped kind of background characters just blurting out a random part of their backstory at a crucial moment in the story, and it's like I said in one of my reviews a couple weeks ago, like it isn't even necessarily a criticism at this point. It's gotten to the point that I just think it's funny. I laugh every time it happens. A character did it in the most recent episode, and I was just like, oh, there it is. There's the random backstory, just got blurted out for no reason. But yeah, I just more characterization of the background characters just in general, just a little bit. You don't need to do like, give them you don't even need to give them an entire scene. You can just give them extra lines and stuff that develop their character, where it's not just them saying, yes, sir, yes, captain, or, sharing exposition, but they're actually doing like, there's a scene between Adira and Detmer in the most recent episode that is a really good example of what I'm talking about. It's just one scene. There was someone on Twitter, I guess yesterday, talking about the most recent Discovery episode, where they said, boy, it was really nice to see a Detmer-centered episode. And it wasn't a Detmer-centered episode. Detmer was not the center of that episode at all, but she was there as a supporting character, and she was doing important things, and she wasn't just voicing exposition. So maybe it felt like a Detmer episode. It was not in any way a Detmer episode, but they gave Detmer stuff to do that developed her character and made her feel important to the story. And I would like to see more of that. But yeah, Awoshikun and Jet Reno are both excellent choices. And like I said, also Linus or Reese or Bryce or any of the underdeveloped characters would be good for that. Black Cover 95, who's struggling with a moral dilemma. I've grown up with fire. It warms me, cooks my meals, and I've spent many hours of my life gazing into its mesmerizing blaze. Now that I'm older, I'm seeing anti-fire sentiment everywhere. Everyone in the online discourse is or knows someone who's been burnt by it or lost everything they had to it. Their descriptions are graphic and brutal. They say fire is inherently evil, that there's no ethical way to have fire, that even its very essence is to consume and destroy. I've even started to notice media taking this stance, with fire being depicted as the tool of villains to exploit and oppress. The universal consensus seems to be that the world would be positively better if we abolished fire forever in favor of a post-fire society. I see their points. I don't even disagree with them, but I honestly don't think I could ever bring myself to give up fire, even with alternatives and substitutes provided. I don't want people hurt. I'm just cold and hungry. Am I a bad person? I don't think you are, because I believe that fire can possibly be used in ways that are safe and constructive. You know, I think fire can be harnessed in such a way that it could be used in ways that aren't destructive to people. That might take some ingenuity, that might take some creativity, and we would have to keep an eye on it. We'd have to make sure that the fire doesn't get out of control. We'd have to make sure that the fire is very contained and controlled and able to do exactly what we want it to do and nothing else. So we'll have to be vigilant. But given all of those factors in place, I think it's possible. So no, I don't think you're a bad person for not wanting to completely give up on fire. But I do think we are very wise to be wary of it and to be careful of it. I do not think it is fair to say, as Frankenstein once said, fire bad. But nor is it as simple as fire good. Fire good or fire bad. It all depends on how you use fire. I hope this helps to resolve your dilemma. Next question is from Danny K, who says, hey, Steve, if Alex Jones was a professional wrestler, would his gimmick be more or less stupid than the one he has now? Thanks. Hope all is well. I mean, if he went to wrestle for WWE and they just sort of randomly assigned him a gimmick, as it often seems they do to new talent that they're developing, then it could very well be worse than the gimmick he has now. My fear if Alex Jones joined the WWE as a wrestler would be that Vince McMahon would basically allow him to be himself and would push him as a babyface. Or whether or not he was pushed as a babyface, there are enough dipshit fans in the audience that they would cheer Alex Jones and then he would become a babyface just sort of by default. That would be my fear. But no, it is. I mean, they've done conspiracy theorist gimmicks for wrestlers in the past. I don't think they've ever done a conspiracy theorist gimmick for a wrestler and taken it to the point where he was like denying that mass shootings of children happened. That actually did happen, right? So, you know, there is a certain bar that would have to be cleared, or a low bar that would have to be, you know, crept under. But yeah, I think it's possible that Alex Jones could have a worse gimmick as a wrestler than his actual gimmick that he does for a job, but it will be tough. It will be tough. Isaiah Taylor says, so Vladimir Putin put his nuclear forces on high alert. I then decided to watch both the 1987 movie Amazing Grace and Chuck, and on Monday, the truly horrifying 1984 movie BBC's Threads. I then posted the movie on Facebook, and an old bloke from New Zealand attacked me for worrying about the prospect of nuclear war. If it happens kind of thing. I replied, okay, boomer, A few weeks before the Ukraine invasion, I had a massive depression episode, which included suicide thoughts. When I posted those statements, I was also attacked for not seeking help and just wanting to complain about how much my life sucks. Why are people more apathetic to issues such as nuclear war and climate change, but get extremely annoyed and frightened when someone wants to take their own life? Are they not both important? By the way, for the Late Seating podcast, you and Jason should review 1983's The Day After, an American movie about nuclear war. It was directed by Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek The Wrath of Khan. Thanks. That is a good suggestion for Late Seating. I don't know if The Day After would meet our criteria because it is a TV movie. And Jason is a pretty good stickler about only doing theatrical movies for the show. But I mean, I think it would definitely qualify in terms of cultural relevance. I mean, it was a cultural event. It was probably one of the most talked about, if not the most talked about TV movies in the history of American television. When it aired, it was a big deal. So that would definitely qualify. As for, I think the reason why people are more apathetic to issues like nuclear war and climate change is because those are viewed as the person you were arguing about said about nuclear war. If it happens, it happens. Those issues are perceived to be so far beyond the ability of individual people to influence that a lot of people just figure, well, they're not worth worrying about. They're not worth talking about. I'll just go on with my life as best I can, and whatever happens, happens. Whereas when a person is voicing suicidal thoughts, and this is not the right reaction, but because that feels more real and because that feels more down to earth and more a part of everyday life, I think someone talking about their depression and sort of voicing suicidal ideation can make people uncomfortable. And some people react in their discomfort by saying things that were said to you, like, well, if you're that upset, then do something about it. Stop complaining. All you want to do is complain and get attention. Like, though, obviously that's not what you want to say to a suicidal person. That's a terrible, terrible way to react. But I think the reason why something like that provokes such a reaction, whereas nuclear war and climate change doesn't, is because it feels closer to home. It's more likely to provoke a discomfort response. And people value their comfort. We value our comfort in many cases entirely too much. We value our comfort over the well-being of others. And that's not usually a very good place to be. But I think that's probably the explanation. In my infinite wisdom, I could be completely wrong, but that would be my assumption. Andrew Priest, who wishes you all well in the face of yet another tragic war. Been debating recently about nukes. I work with a guy from one of the idiot Republican states, can't remember which, they all blur together, and he's adamant that nuclear weapons have prevented wars. When? Nuclear weapons almost turned the Cold War Soviet-U.S. dick-measuring contest into a thermonuclear disaster over the Turkish and Cuban Missile Crises. His argument was that if a country could destroy the world, nobody would ever fight them. He was still attached to the old 1950s Hollywood idea of nuclear winter. No, mate, nuclear weapons aren't apocalypse machines. They're just a convenient way for one nation to commit war crimes against another. The pointless, senseless loss of life on both sides in Ukraine at the moment is a grim example of how useless these weapons are, kind of like the nation-state version of carrying a gun. Get rid of them. They don't prevent war. They just ensure that if two armed powers do fight, the civilian losses will be even more catastrophic. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm very much for nuclear disarmament. I don't buy the deterrent theory. The thing about that is that is an unfalsifiable premise. You can say, well, the fact that we have nuclear weapons or the fact that other countries have nuclear weapons has prevented war because nuclear states don't want to engage with each other because of the threat of nuclear war. But you can't really prove that, you know? I mean, you can say, well, the reason why China hasn't attacked us is because we both have nukes and neither side wants to trigger a potential nuclear conflict. I mean, maybe that's true, but do we know that for a fact? I don't feel like I know that for a fact. Do you? Does anybody? So it's an unfalsifiable premise. It's an assumption that you can't really, I mean, unless someone from high up in the government who has firsthand knowledge of decision making as far as whether or not to go to war comes forward and says, oh, yeah, no, we totally would have attacked him if they didn't have nukes. But as far as I know, I don't know of any such case of any person who has said that. There's just sort of a lot of general talk about that. Well, that's the way the nuclear, that's the way nukes work. And I agree with you. And I think the whole world would be much better off if nuclear weapons were not a thing, if Superman just flew them all into the sun. Unfortunately, that is not an option. But no, I do not buy that nuclear weapons prevent war. Next question from Stephen G. Clenard. Steve, you're a DC Comics guy. I am indeed. Maybe you can help me with some questions that have been vexing me for some time. I don't recall you ever talking about Aquaman. Are you one of those dipshits who makes fun of him? Or do you agree that Aquaman is freaking awesome and that the haters can go, quote unquote, suck it? 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, and most of the world's population lives near a major body of water. So maybe being the underwater guy isn't so useless after all. Speaking of which, do you think this would be a good premise for a superhero? Hummus Man. Outside of his natural element, he's about as useful as a first base coach, but while completely, or by the way, major slam on Cal Ripken Sr., by the way. But while completely or partially submerged in hummus, he is nigh unbeatable. I'm a little worried that this power might be a little too narrow, so I've considered expanding it to include veggie dip, queso, bean dip, maybe even salsa. But I'm afraid Snack Dip Man might sound a little weird. Thoughts? Well, you can call, I think you should call him Hummus Man. Hummus Man should be his name. But his powers are broad enough that he can function in these other dipping mediums as well. But maybe he discovered his powers through hummus, or hummus is his favorite dip. So he calls himself Hummus Man. He's known as Hummus Man. But if he finds himself near veggie dip or bean dip or what have you, then his powers also function in those. But you can still call him Hummus Man, because I agree, Hummus Man is a much better name than Snack Dip Man. Snack Dip Man does not strike fear in the hearts of criminals. As for Aquaman, here's what I think is funny about Aquaman. I think it's funny how comic book writers and now filmmakers have spent the last 30 years trying to convince us that Aquaman is the most awesome dude in the world. They have steered so hard in the opposite direction of the guy who talks to fish, character, that it's almost come back around the other way and become silly for that reason. Like for how much of an overcompensation it is, right? Because like the Aquaman movie, which I thought was fine. I mean, once they got really into like the underwater, like the Atlantis lore and all that stuff, they my eyes kind of glazed over, because I do not give a shit about any of that. But like the opening scenes when he's attacking those terrorists on the sub and stuff, like a lot of that I really, really liked. But even in that scene, there were all those shots where like Aquaman would do something. He'd like pick up a guy and throw him, or do something really like a feat of strength or something really acrobatic or heroic. And then there'd be like a slow motion shot, or like the camera would cut to a shot of him from behind and he would turn around and look really cool and badass. And I was like, boy, they are really just pulling a muscle to convince me that this guy is cool, right? I mean, they're just pulling out all the stops, and it was hilarious, because it's like, all right, like, dude, he's fine. Like you don't need to exert yourself to this degree to convince me that he's not a joke. He's fine. Okay. But so that's my feelings on Aquaman. Personally, I can go either way. If you want to play him as a joke, as long as the joke is funny, I have no problem with that. If you want to play him as serious, that's fine too, as long as if you can make that work. And you just don't try so hard. Stop trying so hard to convince the audience that it's super, super awesome and not silly at all. Okay, please. I'm speaking mostly to the makers of DC Comics films. Like, just Stop working so hard to convince us that it's not silly and it's totally awesome. Okay? Please. Next question is from Jim Baker. I'm a few years older than you. As a result, I grew up on TNG rather than DS9. TNG has been and continues to be my favorite iteration of Trek. I've tried to watch DS9 2 times previously and never got past the first half of the third season before losing interest. I've been watching along with you and Dana in the Reluctantly series in the hope that I can see the series through your eyes and discover the love that you have for it. So far, it has been working. I've been finding new things to like about the show every other week. We are coming up on what I consider to be the best episode of DS9 that I have seen so far, Season 3, Episode 3, The House of Quark. My question is, are we going to get the chance to see that one on the Reluctantly series? Because I consider it to be in the top 10 Trek episodes ever made across the board. Yes, we are going to watch House of Quark. I know that beginning with Season 2, I began the practice of skipping some episodes so we can get through the series a little faster. But we will be watching House of Quark. I wouldn't quite rate House of Quark that high. I wouldn't call it one of the best Star Trek episodes ever or one of the top 10 best episodes. I'm not even sure if I would say it's top 10 best Deep Space Nine episodes for me, but it is a really good episode. I don't mean to disparage it by saying that. It's a really good episode, and it's a really good Quark episode, and I love Quark. I think he's a fantastic character, and it's a good episode for him. So yes, we are definitely going to be watching House of Quark on Trek Reluctantly. So hopefully you'll join us for that, and you'll enjoy watching it with us, just as you've enjoyed it watching it on your own in the past. So that's something to look forward to. We will not be skipping House of Quark for sure. Agent Meister, Peldor Joyce, Steve, I don't know what I can say about the situation in Ukraine that hasn't already been said. I'm struggling to understand the rationale of inflicting this misery on a country. I know this is naive, but how much is enough for Putin and his creatures? Isn't Russia already big enough? Don't these people remember the celebrations in Eastern Europe at the fall of the Soviet Union? How they categorically rejected all that it stood for? Have we as a species learned nothing? Naive in the extreme, I know, but I'll close by saying that I hope the men responsible for this, and it is always men, die shitting their guts out. Sorry for the rant, but thank you for providing a platform for me to vent. Well, I mean, I can't say I disagree with you on any of those sentiments. It is, you know, the question of how much is enough is certainly one that has come to my mind in the past. You know, Russia, in terms of land area, Russia is the largest country in the world. In terms of population, it's one of the largest countries in the world. I think it's top 10 largest population in the world. What more do you want? You know? And people say like, you know, like, well, and people who have, you know, a lot of people who are not taking Putin's side, but are just trying to sort of offer an explanation for his actions. They're saying, oh, but, you know, he feels hemmed in by NATO. You know, he feels like there's too many NATO countries close to his border, and he's pushing back against that. I mean, again, you have the largest country in the world. There's like over a dozen countries that border Russia. Again, I'm just thinking it's probably more than a dozen. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's such a massive country. There are so many countries on the border. And the idea that this is a legitimate reason, well, he feels pressured by NATO. Dude, you have the largest country in the world. You border everybody. Relax. Like, there's always going to be someone on the border of your country that you might not like, or that might not have the same goals as you, because you have the biggest country in the fucking world. Like, just relax, okay? Yeah, it's the invasion is inexcusable. The war is unjustifiable. It's terrible. It's horrible. I hope that it ends very soon, and that when it's over, there is still an independent, sovereign Ukraine standing. And yeah, I don't know what else I can say about it either, other than what I just said and what you just said. So here's hoping that it doesn't last very much longer. General Contact Unit Problem Child. Is it bad for people to spend their childhoods believing the world is more just, equitable, and peaceful than it really is? When I was a kid, I never had to deal with economic deprivation. I lived in a nice house. I had holidays twice a year. I could regularly have nice food. I could regularly buy toys and video games. Like most kids, I think I just assumed everybody lived like I did. I learned better in my later teens, and I eventually became left-wing. I've met other leftists who had less privileged childhoods than me. I think one of the differences between us is they don't have the nostalgic impulse I sometimes have to fight. They never think, if only we could go back to the 90s, because they don't remember being a carefree child in the 90s like I do. I had a happy childhood because I had a comfortable life and assumed everybody else did. I think the refusal to believe the world wasn't really awesome, that when you were a kid, might make people more likely to be conservative. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I do think that impulse exists. I do think there's that impulse in a lot of adult conservatives to sort of hearken back to the good old days. And there's a lot of, you hear people say things with no basis at all, but on their own assumptions. Like, well, things didn't used to happen like this. When I was a kid, things weren't like this. People didn't do those sorts of things, or we didn't have those problems back when I was a kid. And the truth is almost always, yeah, we did. You just didn't know about it for whatever reason, I don't necessarily know if the solution to the problem is to deprive kids who could have a nice childhood of having a nice childhood. I think maybe educating people, not just educating people as they grow up, as they move like from childhood into adolescence, like you're describing happened to you, like when you became a teenager and you started to kind of figure out that things weren't so great for everybody, that the world wasn't as good all around as it had been for you. And you started to maybe change your feelings or change your opinions on some things, or form some opinions on things that you hadn't really thought about before. I think that process is important and should be encouraged as much as possible for everybody. And also just add to that, encouraging people to be self-reflective and to think critically of their own experiences and learn not to privilege their own experiences, and not to assume that just because life was a certain way for you or for people in your economic bracket or people in your town or people at your school or whatever, that's the way it was for everybody. And if things seem worse now, it represents some kind of radical change to society because things never used to be this way. I think giving teenagers and young adults, as they're growing and changing and forming their opinions on these things, a little bit of perspective, would help. So I don't think necessarily that it's the solution is, to bring up young children to say like, oh, and but by the way, kids, the world is a shitty place. They're probably going to figure out, if they pay any attention to anything at all, they're going to figure out that the world is a shitty place for a lot of people on their own. But the important thing is to give them the ability to have a sense of perspective and to say like, actually the world has been shitty for some people for this entire time. Just because you're just finding out that it's kind of shitty doesn't mean it just got that way. It's been that way for a lot of people all along. And that's an important thing to recognize, and then work that in to your feelings and your thoughts, and when you're forming opinions and trying to decide what your priorities are going forward and what your beliefs are, so anyway, that's what I think. But I do agree with your last point there, that the refusal to believe that the world wasn't really awesome when you were a kid can make people tend to think more conservatively. I think that's probably true. Gull do catfish. The key to a good fish and chip shop is, of course, to have a pun in its name. Think Codfather or Place Station. Following a recent Friday where I was eating chips and watching DS9 on Netflix, I started to wonder what my chippy would be called. Say if the Jumja stick stand on the promenade closed and I snapped up the retail space. A few names come to mind. Captain Pike's, Rollerin's, Haddocking Bay 7, but I ultimately settled on the name Deep Fried 9. Keen-eyed viewers will note that so far I have not so much asked a question, but rather used this forum as an opportunity to derail it with Star Trek fish puns. So here is what I wanted to ask. Suppose you beat me to the retail space on the promenade. What would you sell? While typing, I also thought of Carpton Cisco's, though that might be considered inflammatory given the man's quasi-religious status. Oh, if I could have retail space on the promenade, what would I sell? Oh, boy. I would open an old-fashioned comic book shop with back issue bins with long boxes, you know, and like a little display case for like collectibles and action figures and stuff. But it would be like, you know, and it wouldn't be like a computer store. I wouldn't sell like online comics or whatever the Star Trek equivalent of those would. I would sell like paper printed out comics in Mylar bags in long boxes that people would come in and look through. Yeah. That's what I would call them. That's what I would do. I have no idea what would I call it? What would I call it? There was a comic book store in Hagerstown called Atomic Comics. So maybe I would call my, maybe I would call my Deep Space Nine store like Quantum Comics or something. Or Photonic Comics, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I think I would open a comic shop on the promenade. A very old-fashioned, outdated comic shop. Matthew Lordy, good evening, Steve. Here's a pitch for a Superman story. Him tackling the climate crisis. In the 1930s, a duo of Jewish descent reacted to the horrors unfolding before and during the Second World War by creating a character representing decency, optimism, and helping the common person, even as things looked hopeless. There's always talk about reinventing Superman and making him more relevant to a modern audience. What better way is there than placing him in the context of arguably the greatest issue human civilization has ever grappled with? Punching billionaire sociopaths? Dismantling systems of oppression and extractivism? Inspiring people to do better and become more selfless for the sake of future generations? How would you go about writing such a story? There are a couple of templates to follow. There was the Superman 4 is not a good movie, but the premise of Superman 4, that Superman finally decides to do something about nuclear proliferation, is a great idea for a Superman story. It just wasn't carried out very well. So you could take what works or what could have worked from that. And also there was the Superman giant size special that Alex Ross and Paul Dini did. I think it was called Peace on Earth. And that was a similar story where Superman was involving himself in like global political issues and the sorts of big problems that Superman in the comics often avoids getting involved in. But I think ultimately the point of the story, unless you wanted the story to be Superman just genuinely just steps in as Superman and fixes everything, I think it would have to be Superman playing the role of the person who inspires the people of the world and, people who have the power to make a difference, to actually do something about it. Superman would have to be sort of the guiding light. And then people would have to follow and do the actual work so that it would mean a little bit more than Superman just coming in and fixing everything. But in terms of like individual stories or who the villains would be, I think billionaires, giant corporations, industries that are major polluters, politicians or political groups or political parties that act to protect and prop up major polluting industries that are contributors to climate change, global poverty, things like that are, and mechanisms that keep people in poverty, because it's not poor people's fault. The impoverished are not to blame for climate change, but in many cases, a lot of the systems that keep people in poverty are contributing to climate change. So, identify those as the enemy and, find ways to personify those so that Superman has somebody to oppose and somebody to struggle against. And then go with that, but yeah, I do think the idea, because they're like, I would look to Superman 4, I would look to Superman Peace on Earth as models to say, how do you approach a story where Superman is fighting not, an alien warlord or not a Lex Luthor type who's just like an evil billionaire guy who's just out to get Superman, but a problem that is larger than any individual, even someone as powerful as Superman, could solve on their own. And there are examples, there are existing stories of Superman that do that. And I would want to look at those and see how that approach worked or didn't work, and then how you could figure out how you could change it. But yeah, something like that, I think, would be good. And yeah, Superman punching billionaire sociopaths is always a good idea to me. Madeline, hey Steve, I hope you're having a good day. I can't think of a good question, so instead I'm just going to ask you for a movie recommendation. Well, you folks can see on screen the next question is going to prompt me to talk about a movie I just saw today, and I am going to recommend that movie. But in addition, if there's another movie I can recommend to you, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a movie that came out about 5 or 6 years ago starring Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, called The Nice Guys. It's written and directed by Shane Black, and it's kind of like an action comedy where Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling play private investigators in LA in the 70s, and they get involved in this murder investigation. And I just watched it on Jason's recommendation. He had been trying to get me to watch it for months, and I finally remembered to watch it. I watched it a couple weeks ago, and it's on Hulu. I don't know if you have Hulu or not, but it's really, really good. And like I said, it's not like a super recent movie. It's probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 years old at this point. But it's really funny, very well written, and well directed. It has some good action stuff, some good fight scenes in it, and some really, really good comic acting from Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. And just a really terrific movie. The kind of like really satisfying action comedy that I really dig. So I would if you haven't seen it, and if you like that kind of movie, maybe you're not into that kind of movie, but I would recommend The Nice Guys. I think it's a really, really fun movie, and I'm very glad I watched it. Now, the next question is from alias Dibs' OTP. Although I'm going to tell you a secret. This question is actually from Dana. Dana actually asked me this question. Dibs' OTP says, so by now you've almost certainly seen the new Batman movie with that dude from Twilight. If you haven't seen it, why not? What's wrong with you, Steve? Geez, you could that gives it away. You can tell that it's Dana's question. Nobody else talks to me that way. Nobody else would dare. However, if you have, that's better. Was the movie as good as you hoped? Was it as least as good as you anticipated? What did you like about it? Where did it miss the mark? What was your favorite moment? Bit of dialogue. I'm a sucker for good dialogue. What does your Batman movie ranking list look like now, and why? Do you think I'd like this one much at all? Is not Edward in this appropriately hot? Yes, the second T is supposed to be there. Does he do a reasonable amount of smoldering for a tormented anti-hero? Is it too much? Too little? Is he the sexiest Batman? If not, who is? And should Batman be sexy anyway? Why? Or why not? Boy, you bullet pointed the review out for me pretty nicely there. Thank you. Okay, so I have seen the movie, as I have said already. I did like it. I liked it a lot. It was it was better than I hoped. I was cautiously optimistic about it. I was not expecting it to be a masterpiece. I was expecting it to be good. I don't think I would quite say it is a masterpiece. I don't think it's quite like that good, but it was really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot, and it did some things that I really, really thought were terrific and really appreciated. I'm going to talk about a few of those things, but I'm going to keep it spoiler free because I know the movie just came out, and a lot of people watching this probably want to see it and haven't had a chance to see it yet. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'll tell you what I liked about it. The marketing of the movie and the director, Matt Reeves, when he was interviewed about it and was talking about it, he was pushing the fact that his Batman movie would be focused on the detective aspect of Batman. And that turned out to be true. This is very much a Batman, because it's been one of the things that I know a lot of Batman fans, myself included, and I think Jason has kind of made this complaint as well, that whether all the Batman movies that have been made over the past many, many years, good and bad, one of the things that has been missing for a lot of Batman fans from all of them is that you almost never get to see Batman being a detective. And in the comics, that's been a very important part of his character. Well, in this new movie, The Batman, it is definitely a Batman detective movie. Like, he is solving mysteries, investigating crimes, investigating clues. Like, he's being the Dark Knight detective for the entire movie. And so that gives it a different feel than a lot of other Batman movies. Also, it's a lot pulpier. You know, it feels like kind of like a pulp fiction detective story in a lot of ways, which I really liked. There's a voiceover narration from Batman. Again, not incessant, not like all the way through, but just a little bit here and there that gives it kind of a detective story kind of feel, like the detective narrating their own story. Again, it doesn't go over the top. It doesn't do that too much, but I like that. I like the production design. I think Gotham City probably looks more distinctive in this movie than it has in any movie since the Tim Burton Batmans, with those awesome production designs that they had. It's not quite that distinctive or that striking, but it's definitely like the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, for as good as they were, especially The Dark Knight, which I still think is the best Batman movie. Gotham City was not really, at least in terms of its visual look, in terms of its aesthetic, Gotham City was kind of nondescript. Like, The Dark Knight was mostly shot in Chicago, and Gotham City in The Dark Knight just kind of looks like Chicago, right? It doesn't really pop visually, other than the fact that Chicago is a gorgeous city, but there's nothing about it that reads like Gotham, right? That's fine. It's not really a criticism of the Nolan movies. That just wasn't a part of his vision for Batman. It wasn't important to him. But it is important to Matt Reeves' version of Batman, and Gotham in this movie definitely has more of a sense of character and more of a unique Gotham feel to it than it has in a lot of the recent movies. So I really, really liked that. The performances were great, like across the board. The action scenes were really good. There were a couple of fight scenes in it that were really excellent. There's a really good car chase that I was very, very pleased with. And you get to see Batman save people. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything as far as what happens in the plot, but there are a couple of times in the movie, and this is very rare for a Batman movie, where you see Batman saving people, rescuing people, leading people from harm or protecting people from harm. And not just people that he knows personally. It's not like he's just running to the rescue of Jim Gordon or Alfred or Catwoman or people that he knows, like protecting the people, protecting the public, protecting strangers on the street or wherever they happen to be. And I like that. Like, that tells me that he's a hero. It tells me that he cares. It tells me that he's a good guy for reasons other than, well, he's good enough to beat these bad guys over here. Like, it makes him a good guy. And this movie is smart enough to realize that. It's good. It shows us the hero helping people, saving people, protecting people. And that works. Where it misses the mark, the main villain the concept of the main villain is very strong, and I like it a lot, but it's one of those things where the main villain, for me at least, and your mileage may vary, but the main villain becomes less interesting the more we actually see of him and the more we learn about him. And that's a problem. And that's really, for me, that's the main thing that holds it back from being as good as The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight had Heath Ledger's version of the Joker, which is just outstanding. And every time, and the more you see of Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight, the more you want to see him. Whereas with the main villain in The Batman, it doesn't have that same effect. He's compelling and intriguing up to a point, but then once you start to get revelations about him and once you sort of see more of him, the interest level kind of drops and he gets less compelling again to me. Favorite bit of dialogue, favorite moment was one of the, I think I actually, Dana, when we talked about it privately earlier, I told you what was my really favorite moment in the movie, but I don't want to say that here because it's kind of a spoiler. But it involves Batman lighting a flare. But favorite bit of dialogue is when, and this is a scene that's already been released as like a teaser, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but there's a scene where Batman and Gordon are talking about a cop who Batman has learned works for a gangster. And Batman tells Gordon, he sees the cop near where he and Gordon are talking, and he says, what's the story with so-and-so? And Gordon says, oh, that's Detective what's his name? And Batman says, oh, I saw him working at the club with all the gangsters the other night. And Gordon says, are you telling me that Detective so-and-so moonlights as muscle for the mob? And Batman says, no, I'm telling you, he moonlights as a cop. And that's just such a great, like, hard-boiled detective line. Oh, I loved it. What does my Batman movie ranking list look like now? I would put this new one, I would put in the number 2 slot. I think it is the best Batman movie I have seen other than The Dark Knight. I think it's better than any of the other live action Batmans except for The Dark Knight. As far as live action Batman movies, I would say the list at this point goes Dark Knight, The Batman, Batman 66, Batman Returns, Dark Knight Rises. Let me see. Batman Begins, Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, I guess. Because last year I rewatched Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, and I think they switched places. For years I thought Batman and Robin was the worst Batman movie. I actually think Batman Forever is even worse. Like, Batman Forever is just fucking dreck. And Batman and Robin is too. Like, Batman and Robin is dog shit. But Batman Forever just did not do anything for me at all. Like, it just... So I think at this point, I think Batman Forever is the bottom. Yeah, I think that's the pecking order there. Do I think you would like it? I think you would. Yeah, I don't know if you would like it. I mean, it is close to 3 hours. And I know, like, I am sensitive to running times of movies. I didn't think it was that much of an issue for this one. Like, I wasn't checking my watch or feeling, restless during this one. I think it moves pretty quickly. So the running time isn't necessarily a problem for me, but it might be for you because I know that you are it's difficult for you to sit through to watch a long movie in one sitting. But in terms of its characterization of Batman and the story it tells, I think you would probably enjoy it. And is not Edward in this appropriately hot? I guess. I mean, he's a good-looking dude. But the movie doesn't, it's not really trying to make his Batman particularly sexy. Like, Catwoman is in the movie as well, and there is some sexual chemistry between the two of them. But it's not like the movie is trying to present Robert Pattinson's Batman as particularly sexy. So I guess he's appropriately hot. Yeah, I mean, you know, he's hotter. He's hotter as Batman than he was in the Lighthouse. But then again, I guess you weren't really supposed to think he was all that hot in the Lighthouse. He doesn't really smolder. He's not. I mean, he's dark and he's tormented, but it's surprisingly there's surprisingly little angst. Like, it's not like super angsty. The movie, it's dark and it's grim and there's a lot of serious sort of brooding kind of intensity, but it's not really angsty, which I liked. I liked a lot. So no, it's not too much. It's not too little. It's just right. Is he the sexiest Batman? I mean, again, it's hard to tell. It's hard to say. Like, I don't think he was presented as being especially, I guess it depends on how much you dig Robert Pattinson, you know? I mean, whether or not he's the sexiest Batman. And if he's not, who is? I guess Adam West. Adam West was, you know, I mean, Adam West was a POA in that Batman costume, wouldn't you think? According to reports, he was certainly doing okay for himself in that department back in the day. Should Batman be sexy anyway? I mean, I when I think of Batman and try to write Batman stories, I don't think of him being sexy or try to make him sexy, but I suppose there's no particular reason why he couldn't be or shouldn't be if the story was good enough or if there was a good enough angle to explore that side of him. But it's not something that I naturally gravitate towards as a writer, you know. So I don't know. But, you know, I mean, a good-looking dude played Batman, so I guess that's sexy. I don't know. But overall, really, really good Batman movie. I was very, very pleased with it. I liked it a lot. If anybody else has seen it or has any questions about it, once I get through the rest of the patron member questions, I would love to chat more about it with you all in the live chat for the latter portion of the show. But yeah, overall, really, really liked the Batman. Next question is from a very, very tired, a bit overworked and underpaid Some Random Geek. Capitalism is terrible. It needs poverty to function. I don't understand how someone can be placed in the bottom left corner of the political compass test, the libertarian socialist corner, and be a capitalist. No one person can represent a vast group of people. Can there be anyone to represent me other than myself? I mean, no politician in the USA or the imperialist corporations of white supremacy can represent someone as vehemently anti-capitalist as me. You know what, Steve? I will give you a break from political questions and throw you a curveball question. On Twitch, I have 5 followers emotes slots and 3 tier 1 sub emote slots. I have an artist friend who needs to make some money and offering to make some emotes for me. When you think of me, what emotes do you think I would have, or what emotes would work for me? I know Twitch is not your thing and you will never do Twitch, but I figure I would ask you and ask around. I have no idea what emotes are. So I don't think I can help you. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I'm glad that you're asking around and you're asking other people. Who maybe have more of a frame of reference for it and could offer you a more helpful answer than I can. Because I mean, I know what emote, I recognize the word emote. I assume it has something to do with like maybe like, you know, emoticons or something. But I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never, literally the only times I have ever been on Twitch have been when I have been a guest on someone else's show, when they have invited me on their Twitch stream and I've said, okay, right. I spend no time on Twitch at all. So I don't have any idea how any of that works or what any of the lingo means or anything. So I'm very sorry that I can't help you with that, but I can't. I have no idea. Jacob Monroe says, hello, Steve. What are you most excited about and not excited about for Revolution? Calm down, Some Random Geek. Jacob's talking about the Revolution pay-per-view, the wrestling show this Sunday, not the Revolution that you're hoping for. So yeah, this Sunday is All Elite Wrestling's Revolution pay-per-view, and there are 3 matches that I am really, really excited to see. There's one match that I'm interested in. And then the rest of it, I couldn't care less about. So the three matches I am really, really super interested in seeing are roughly in order of how interested I am to see them. First of all, Danielson versus Moxley. Super excited to see that match. I think the build for that has been great. I think Danielson, since he came to AEW, has been just unbeatable in the ring, has been having some of the best matches of his career. And I think the program with him and Moxley has been done really well, where, you know, he tries to get Moxley to join him to take his side. And Moxley says, I'm not going to take your side until we have a fight, because I don't stand next to somebody unless I bleed with them. Like, I love that. And I'm a big fan of Jon Moxley. And when Jon Moxley decides to wrestle instead of do a garbage match, he's a great wrestler. And I'm a big fan of his, and I'm a big fan of him as a personality. He cuts great promos. He has a great gimmick. I love his whole thing. I love the way he walks. I love the way he carries himself. I love his style in the ring. I'm a big fan of Jon Moxley. And so I think that Moxley and Danielson can have a hell of a match. And I'm really, really excited to see that match. The second one is, of course, MJF versus CM Punk in the dog collar match. That has been an amazing feud. I think they've been carrying this thing along for months now, and it has been a masterclass in how to book a long-term issue between two wrestlers. I don't think they've taken a major misstep yet, and they've done a great job of kind of heating it back up recently to get us hyped for the dog collar match. I thought MJF's promo last week was great, and then Punk's promo and the angle they did afterwards this week was just awesome. I thought Punk's promo, I guess 3 weeks ago now, when he challenges him to the dog collar match, that built up to him asking, you know, will you be my Valentine? Like, that was a fantastic promo. Both guys have been great. I think the match will be great. So I'm really hyped about the dog collar match. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Kingston versus Jericho, because I love Eddie Kingston. And I think even though the angle, the program between Kingston and Jericho hasn't been going for as long and hasn't been nearly as compelling as the MJF CM Punk stuff or the Danielson Moxley stuff, I still think what they've done so far has been really good. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of Eddie Kingston. I think he's the best talker in professional wrestling by far. Like, I don't know who second place is, probably Punk at this point, but I mean, Eddie Kingston is just amazing on the microphone. He sounds real. He sounds like he's actually, he sounds like he means everything he says. And that's a very, very important quality. So those are the three matches I'm really looking forward to. The other match that I'm interested in, not necessarily on the edge of my seat about, but interested in, mostly because of the people involved, is the women's world title match between Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, because I'm a big fan of Thunder Rosa. I don't think Thunder Rosa is going to win the title, and I don't even necessarily know if having her win the title would be the right thing. I feel like you could probably still leave it on Britt for a while. But I think that's going to be a good match, and I like both women. I think they're terrific wrestlers, and I'm especially a big fan of Thunder Rosa. So I'm looking forward to seeing that match as well. Not quite as hooked on it as I am those other matches I talked about, but very interested in seeing that one. And the rest of the card, I don't particularly care about seeing any of those matches. Some of them will probably be good matches. Some of them will probably be matches that I won't enjoy, but you know, that's part and parcel of being a wrestling fan. You're not going to like everything. You're not going to be, you know, you don't buy a wrestling show because you want to see every single match. You know, you buy a wrestling show because there are matches on the show that you want to see. And that's the case with this. So I am really looking forward to the show, and particularly for those matches. So those are the ones that I'm really, really, really hyped about. John Burns. Hey, Steve, hydrate. Thanks for the reminder. Back during the Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK agreed to remove missiles in Turkey aimed at the Soviet Union in exchange for the removal of missiles in Cuba. There is an Aegis system in Poland, and it's defensive, but the ability to shoot down Russia's missiles allows the West to use theirs. Also, it's pointedly directed at Moscow. Maybe this could be offered to Putin in exchange for a lasting peace. I'm not sure if it will be enough. 4 days ago, Finland lawmakers were debating joining NATO. Not a big deal considering Norway, an original member of NATO, borders Russia, and a territorial dispute between Stalin and Turkey led to Turkey becoming a member of NATO, which Greece wasn't happy about. Also, Georgia formally requested joining the EU. So what do you think? Might it be an idea, or is this still a territorial dispute without getting other countries involved except Belarus? I honestly don't know enough about it to judge whether, offering Putin, offering a concession about, standing down that missile defense system in Poland would make a difference or what. I don't know how much of it is because Putin is sincerely concerned about being surrounded by NATO and how much of it is just him or his apologists using that excuse to justify him just wanting to gain more territory, I really don't know. I mean, in a sense, it is a territorial dispute. The dispute is very lopsided. The dispute is Putin wants Ukraine, and everybody else in the world is saying, what? No, you shouldn't do that. So, I mean, I guess it's disputed in that sense, but it doesn't seem like a legitimate dispute where there are two sides, to the dispute that need to be resolved. It seems like there's one side that is clearly judged by almost the entire rest of the world as being the one in the wrong, which would be Putin, and everybody else is on the side of Ukraine saying, oh no, they're clearly the ones being invaded without justification. So, but I don't know. Like I said earlier to the previous question, to the earlier question, I do hope that there is some peace reached soon, and that peace allows, Russian forces to leave Ukraine and to allow Ukraine to remain a peaceful, independent, unoccupied country. That would be, and I hope that happens very soon. But other than that, it is well above my pay grade to be making any sorts of. To be offering any sorts of opinions about it. Siamak, who has been traveling for work this week to the COVID hellscape of Florida. Greetings, Steve. As I said, I've been traveling this week. It has been something, I won't lie. It felt good to see people, but still. But as such, I've not really had time to think of a question. But I did listen to the latest late seating on the plane. I have to say, Jason's discomfort at making fun of Downfall was completely understandable, but also delicious. Yay for uncomfortable Opinionville. Bless his heart. There are, here's the thing. There are ways in which I think Jason is clearly a better person than me. Because even though, and he did make a joke on the show that was so bad that he decided to bleep it out, which I think actually makes the show better. It makes the joke that he bleeped out seem worse because now your imagination is like, what the fuck did he say? I'm not going to tell you what he said, but I feel the same way about the movie that Jason does. And I think that comes across in our reviews. I think Downfall is not only a great film, but an important film, and perhaps maybe an educational film or an instructive film, and an important film to watch to realize that, yes, the Nazis, the people who committed these unforgivable war crimes, were still people. And I don't say that to humanize them. I say that almost as a warning, they were not aliens who came to this planet. They were us. They were people. And they did these horrible things, and we should be aware of that. And hopefully it would help us prevent this sort of thing from happening again, right? If we remember, they're not monsters, they're people. People are capable of these sorts of things. We need to be aware of this, right? And Jason and I agree on that. But it never even occurred to me. I mean, I agree with you. It's completely understandable that he would be uncomfortable making fun of the movie, but that never even occurred to me, right? I was ready. I had my Hitler jokes locked and loaded. I was ready to go. I was ready to make fun of that movie, to make fun of Hitler, to make fun of these characters. I was just turn me loose on Downfall, right? Because that's just how I am. Because I can make fun of movies I don't like, but in a lot of ways, movies that I do like, even movies that I admire, are even more fun to make jokes about because I know exactly which jokes to make. Like, I know where the soft spots are because I love the movie. I feel like it's closer to me. That's why I can make fun of Star Trek so well, I think, because I love Star Trek. But I know where the soft spots are, and Downfall is a similar thing. So it never even occurred to me to feel bad or to feel sheepish or to be reluctant to make fun of Downfall. But with Jason, it was obviously something. And I think a lot of that was genuine. Some of it, as always, some of it I think was turned up a little, was overplayed for the sake of the podcast. But it was very genuine on his part. Like, he did genuinely feel that way. And we talked about it before the recording, where he was like feeling a little torn about it. Like, am I a bad person for making fun of this movie? And, so I think that's a big difference between me and Jason is like, he has a little bit more of a conscience for that sort of thing where I'm like, yeah, absolutely. It's a great movie. It's an important movie. Let's make fun of this motherfucker because that's our show. Right. So I think Jason's a better person than me. Scott P. Hey, Steve, you're a baseball fan, so I'm sure you're aware of the current lockout happening in MLB. It's incredibly disappointing to see this happen, and I fully side with the players in this labor struggle. I'm hoping they can come to a resolution soon because baseball is the only sport I give a damn about, and I fear another shortened season, or perhaps no season at all, could be incredibly harmful to the popularity of a sport that has already been dwindling in viewership over the past few decades. My question to you is, do you think baseball will suffer a similar fate in our world to the fate it suffered in Trek? 2042 is when professional baseball came to an end in the fictional world, and honestly, it feels like it could be a real possibility now. It's a shame considering the rich history of the sport, as well as the plethora of young talent we have today. Guys like Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto are incredible talents that deserve to be seen, not sidelined. Well, I definitely agree with you. I don't think it's quite that dire. I mean, I think what will probably happen is I do think, based on a number of factors, the popularity will continue to shrink. I don't think it'll ever go away. I mean, there are sports, there are professional sports that still exist and are still able to have full seasons and maintain, a schedule that are even less popular than Major League Baseball is at this point, and that still have TV deals and, are still profitable. Or they're not as big as the NFL or the NBA, but they're still very profitable. And I think Major League Baseball will eventually become that. It'll become even more, it will no longer be as big of a deal as certainly as it was, 50 years ago, and probably not even as big of a deal as it is now, but it won't completely go away. It'll just be kind of a niche thing. I think that's probably most likely what will happen. I don't see it going away, and I certainly don't see it going away by the year 2042. I think in 20 years there will still be Major League Baseball. It just maybe there won't be as many teams, or the TV deals will not be for as much money, or the salaries won't be quite as high because the leagues won't be pulling in as much revenue, but it will still be there in some form. I don't think it'll completely go away, because like I say, there are sports with even smaller audiences that exist on a professional level. So I don't think that's a problem. But I am, as a baseball fan, it is depressing. It's depressing to me that football is so much more popular than baseball, and football is the ugliest sport that I know of. I mean, it's just ugly from top to bottom, and to me, baseball, at least on the field, baseball is beautiful. Now, behind the scenes, a lot of baseball is quite ugly, but on the field, baseball is just one of the most beautiful things in the world. Whereas I think everything about football is ugly. I mean, on the field, off the field, everything about it is just disgusting and gruesome and hideous. But at least on the field, baseball is sublime. So yeah, it sucks as a fan. It sucks, and I hope that I'm on the player side too. Of course, I'm always a player guy in these disputes. Um, I hope it gets resolved. I hope the season isn't shortened too long. I certainly hope the season doesn't end up being completely canceled. Hopefully, they can come to some kind of an agreement. But yeah, the lockout and the generally dwindling popularity of the sport are both big bummers for me, for sure. Joe McClory, did you watch the State of the Union speech? If so, what did you think? If not, why not? I didn't watch it because it came on at my bedtime. During the week, I usually try to go to bed at 9 o'clock because I get up early in the morning. So I didn't watch it for that reason. And I actually told myself, well, it's going to be on YouTube afterwards. So you should just watch it the next day. And I just haven't gotten around to watch. I guess the answer is I didn't watch it because I just didn't care. And I feel bad about that. I think I probably should have watched it and maybe should still watch it, or at least have read like a transcript of it or something. But the fact was I was busy with other stuff and it was on too late for me to watch it live and I just haven't watched it. So, it is what it is. But no, I did not watch it. Next question is from Russell, who says, "Hey, Steve, how are you?" So I saw a post that kind of bugged me. So here goes. It was a forum that compared Janeway's actions to killing Tuvix to DS9's Odo killing 8,000 people in Children of Time. Here's the thing. DS9 was rigged. Sisko was the emissary to the prophets who controlled the wormhole, and Odo was a founder, a member of the Changelings, and they refused to consider him an enemy despite what happened in Season 4. So without Odo and Sisko, it's more likely the founders would have won that war, which would have cost millions of lives, although this thought probably never occurred to Odo. Is Odo a monster for his actions, and is the Odo that returns to DS9 liable? Then again, there is the Voyager episode Revelations, where Captain Braxton is made to answer for crimes he committed in the future. When I saw this forum, I had many opinions about it. And ironic, we do shame Janeway and often forget about Odo's action. Anyways, take care for now. See you in the live stream. Well, I think the difference is, I think the DS9 episode in question judges Odo for doing that. I think there is in the episode, there are characters asking the question, was it right for Odo to do this? Right. You get the idea that Odo being willing to sacrifice all of those people so that Kira, the person he loves, can live. Like, that's not the morally right thing to do, but Odo does it for sympathetic reasons, right? Because he can't bear to let this person that he cares so much about, and that in this version of him has missed for so long, he can't bear to let her go a second time. He's willing to do anything to give her a second chance. And the episode doesn't tell us, oh, what Odo does is completely fine, right? The episode, it doesn't come down hard and say, oh, he was definitely wrong to do that, but it doesn't sort of let him off the hook either. Whereas with the Tuvix episode of Voyager, I feel like I don't think the episode is that thoughtful about it, because remember in the Tuvix episode, not only does Janeway kill Tuvix, but the rest of the crew lets her do it. And I think there would have been an opportunity there to explore that, to make it, to at least raise the issues of, why are all of these people allowing this person to be basically put to death while he is begging not to be, and they all stand back and allow it to happen. Why is it okay for them to choose their own comfort, or, to choose to have their old friends back at the cost of this innocent life? Why is that okay? But I don't think the episode really ever engages with that. But I think the DS9 episode at least engages enough with what Odo does to put it on another level. So, I mean, in terms of the actual crime itself, I think what Odo does is worse, but I think the episode treats it differently enough that I don't think it's not a problem for me in the same, as far as the way it's presented in the show. It's not as much of a problem for me as Janeway's actions toward Tuvix. And this is the last one, finally, from Saint JL. Hi, Steve. Hope you're doing well. Happy Friday. Thanks for the words of encouragement last Askaway. Unfortunately, I did not get the job, but the rejection didn't crush me like I thought it was going to. And I won't let that rejection keep me from looking for better opportunities. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Game of Thrones? Have you seen it? If not, would you, even though the final episodes were not well received by a lot of fans? I know you don't like the Lord of the Rings, but Game of Thrones subverts traditional fantasy tropes, and GRRM is a feminist, atheist, socialist. The TV show had fewer magical elements than the books, and the magic is more grounded than in Lord of the Rings, so it should be like watching Buffy or Angel. I'm sorry if you've been asked this before. You were asked about the Lord of the Rings a few weeks back, and I was curious. I just wondered what your thoughts are as a critic. I have never watched it. I have never been interested in watching it. I'm probably never going to watch it. So that's pretty much the end of it. I've been told by other people, this is another one that Jason has talked to me about. And he said, you should maybe give it a chance. I think you would like it. It's not just, people say like, well, there's not as much magic in it, or it's not high fantasy in a traditional sense. It looks awfully high fantasy-ish to me, I mean, there's people living in castles. There's fucking dragons in it. It just doesn't look interesting to me. It's just like faux medieval like dark fairy tale stuff. It just doesn't seem like my thing. It seems like something I just wouldn't enjoy. And like I said, everything I've ever seen about it or heard about it or clips I've seen of it, it just makes me think, no, I don't think I would like that. I know I've not seen it, and I have no particular desire to see it. But thank you very much for the question. I do appreciate that. And that is it for the patron and member questions. Thank you all for sticking around this long. I will turn now to the live chat for the remainder of the show, and let's see what everybody here wants to talk about. Doc Azrael, are you surprised that I haven't seen Game of Thrones? For people who don't know, high fantasy or even things that are like high fantasy-ish is probably my least favorite genre. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm positively not a fan of Lord of the Rings. I just don't enjoy it. I don't think it's interesting. And just high fantasy stuff in general just bores me to tears. I do not enjoy it. I do not seek it out. I don't watch it. So no, I've never seen Game of Thrones. Duranta Trekkie says, so I'm watching the first episode of Star Trek Picard Season 2 tomorrow. Please no spoilers, but what did you think about Season 2, Episode 1 of Picard? I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a very good beginning. It's only one episode, so it's hard to make any predictions at this point. I hope the rest of the season lives up to the beginning. I did have a little bit of a fear that maybe, and again, I try not to do this, but if I sort of project like what happened in this episode and what is presumably going to happen in the next episode, I did kind of have the thought, I wonder if they could have just done the first 2 episodes in one episode. You know what I mean? Like, I can kind of see what the next big plot beat is going to be. And I kind of wondered, like, I wonder maybe it would have been better to just do it all to have the first episode be the setup of everything and then go from there. Because one of the problems I felt with the first season of Picard was they basically made the first 3 episodes the setup. They took 3 episodes to get the characters where they needed to be for the real big story of the season to start. And that felt like it was just way too long. They dragged it out for 3 episodes, and they could have just done the first 3 episodes of Picard Season 1 could have easily been 1 episode. And I'm hoping that is not going to end up being the case for Season 2. But judged on its own merit, I thought the first episode of Season 2 was very good. Super chat from John Burns. A couple of them, actually. Thank you, John, as always, for the generosity. I was a child of the 70s. Not a bad time. When you were a kid, you could believe that your family wasn't poor. Too bad the media gave us financial anxiety as kids with body image anxiety. Decades later, you could believe that a man could raise his kids on a shoe salesman's salary after scoring 4 rushing touchdowns against Polk High. Thanks, television. Good Married with Children reference there. Well, the thing is, back in the day, at least... you know, in the United States, I don't know how things were where you are, but, you know, probably 40, 50, 60 years ago, a person could raise a family on a shoe salesman's salary, you know, like it was much more plausible for a person with a decent job to be able to support a family and to have, for the family to have one income where one parent worked and the other parent stayed home with the kids. Like that was much more plausible, you know, before I was born, than it is now. Not to say it's all my fault. It's only partially my fault, but yeah, you know, so it wasn't just a fantasy perpetuated by Al Bundy. Many years before that, I think it was actually a reality for a lot of people. Radical Bacon, this is amazing. For anybody who doesn't, Radical Bacon is writing a story about my life that they are apparently making a high fantasy story just because they know I would hate that. And I find that delightful. So, anyway, Radical Bacon says, I'm having you meet a character called Like and Subscribe, a fellow YouTuber and werewolf. Thoughts? I think that's amazing. My desire to read your story has just increased. That's brilliant. I love it. Like and subscribe. 255 AD says, so you don't like high fantasy. How do you feel about stories set in the actual Middle Ages? I'm trying to think if there are any stories set in the actual Middle Ages that I have enjoyed. That's a little different. Like, I don't think stories set in the actual Middle Ages turn me off automatically like high fantasy does. That would be more of a case-by-case basis, you know? But off the top of my head, I can't. Well, I mean, I don't think it was quite the Middle Ages. It might have been the Dark Ages. But anyway, I mean, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Come on. Like, that was Middle Ages, right? Or was that Dark Ages? I don't know. It was one of those. But anyway, Robin Hood, baby. Kevin Costner Robin Hood. Except no substitutes. Here is a member message from Kirak 2011. Says, to follow up on my Q&A, a couple of things one shouldn't. Shouldn't Odo have died since he was infected by the Section 31 virus? And 2, Odo knew these descendants for many years, and yet he was willing to sacrifice them for one individual. Well, I mean, but I mean, that's part of what makes his action morally difficult. It's not, like I said, it's not, the episode doesn't tell us like automatically that, yes, he did the right thing, but it's more like he was willing to sacrifice those other lives for the life of one individual because he cared about that individual so much. It doesn't make what he did right. And Kira herself is very uncomfortable with it, you know, at the end of the episode. But it is what it is. Like, that's what he did, and that's why he did it, you know. And as for should he have died since he was infected by Section 31 virus, I can't remember what the resolution was to that. I don't know if they ever explained that or not. Sereno Geek, how do I feel about Shakespeare? You know, in high school, I had kind of a chip on my shoulder and I didn't really like Shakespeare, but these days I enjoy Shakespeare. 225AD says, suppose you could make all the fossil fuel in the world vanish Thanos style. Would you do it? Is kind of wrecking everything in the short term worth it to save the Earth? I don't think I would do it that way, no. I don't think that would be a good way to solve those problems. To just, because that would result in chaos, and probably a lot of people would die. So I wouldn't want to do it that way. No, I would not just make everything vanish. Geraldo Trekkie, I don't know. Other than maybe a stray episode here and there, I don't think I've ever seen Space 1999. And yes, I have heard about the new Quantum Leap. And I think Scotty Bax is supposed to be in it, if I recall. I think he said he was interested in doing it, so we'll see. 255AD says, in the Nolan movies, Gotham is just Chicago. Do you agree Gotham should be an old, like 1600s East Coast city, one you'd exactly have to have a lot of Gothic architecture? Not necessarily. I think it depends. Like I said, the way that Nolan does it in his movies is fine. Like, I don't think it has to be one thing or another. To be honest, if I were doing a Batman movie, I mean, I would probably want Gotham to have a sense of character, you know? Like, I wouldn't want it, like, I would probably not want it to just obviously look like Chicago. I would want to give a little bit of production design to it so that it looked a little bit unique and like its own thing. But I wouldn't hit that too hard, you know, because I am more interested in Batman than I am in Gotham. Like, I'm not really into, like, well, Gotham is like a character in the story. Like, that's just not where my interest lies with the character. Gotham is where Batman lives. Gotham is where Batman is Batman. But, so I think, and Gotham, I think, should have a personality that makes it distinct from other cities, but I wouldn't hit that too hard. And I don't think that is as important to me as it is to some other people. But there's no wrong way to do it. Like, the way Nolan did it was fine. The way Tim Burton did it, with that amazing Anton First production design, was also fine. It depends on the story and depends on what your priorities are and what your vision is for the character and for the story. Some random geek, well, in that case, maybe like an angry one, because you're like righteously indignant about the injustice in the world. Maybe that would be an emote for you. Oh, bye, Dana. Sorry that everything's so exhausting. Yes, and thanks, Some Random Geek. Don't forget Dana's YouTube channel, and I'll mention this at the end of the stream too, but don't forget Dana has a live stream on her channel tomorrow night at 6, the Saturday 6. So make sure to watch that. I don't know if she has it... I don't know if she has it linked on her channel yet or not. So I don't have it in the description of this live stream, but I will put it in as soon as she schedules it, if she schedules it tonight or tomorrow before the show. But Saturday 6, tomorrow at 6 on Dana's channel. Doc Azrael says, would you be on board for a campy Adam West style reboot? Yeah, sure. If it worked, if it was funny, absolutely. You know, when I watch the Schumacher films, especially Batman and Robin, to me, the biggest problem with them, the biggest reason why they don't work, especially Batman and Robin, it's not what they're trying to do, it's that they don't succeed. If the jokes in Batman and Robin were funny, if the comedy Batman and Robin attempts was actually accomplished, was actually successful, then it would be a way better movie. Like, if someone wants to do an Adam West style Batman and actually make it work and make it funny, like the Adam West Batman was, I think that would be terrific. I would love that. Yeah. I mean, I think I've said before, and I've, you know, my preferred Batman, if I was going to do a Batman movie or I was hired to write Batman for DC Comics or something, I prefer a serious Batman. My Batman would probably be pretty serious and pretty dark because that's the Batman I grew up on, and that's just how I see the character. But there's nothing wrong with a lighthearted, funny Batman. If it works, if it's good, there's no reason not to do it if you have a take on it that, that you can pull off. I think that's terrific. Um, do, 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 do. Pedro says, what about that Wayne Manor, huh? So gothic, I almost heard Pattinson say creatures of the night. What music they made. Yes. Yes, Wayne Manor it basically looked, speaking of medieval, Wayne Manor, the interior of Wayne Manor in the new movie does look like a medieval castle for sure. Um, Gerard Trekkie asks, what's your favorite private investigator show? I like Magnum and Remington Steele. Yeah, the original Magnum for me. The original Magnum PI is one of my favorite shows ever. So I would go that for my favorite. Um, and Gerard Trekkie also says, there are 2 MacGyver episodes I really would like you to cover. One is The Visitor, the one with the aliens, and the other is where he ends up on the Osiris ship. Those aren't on my to-do list. Those aren't neither one of those are really among my favorite episodes, but I mean, when I do more MacGyver videos, I think I could definitely have something to say about them, and also the ones where MacGyver has dreams that, where the Old West episodes or the one where he dreams himself into King Arthur's court, those are interesting too. Not necessarily what I would call good episodes, not representative of the show at its best, but fun and definitely could prove, fruitful fodder for a video. So sure. Pedro, I would prefer that we don't talk about it with spoilers because it just came out and I know a lot of people watching this might want to see it but haven't seen it yet. Super chat from John Burns says, so about Nick Cage and the unbearable weight of, that looks interesting. What's it called? The unbearable weight of extraordinary talent or something? I forget the exact title, but that looks interesting. I don't know. Is it even out yet? But I haven't seen it if it's out yet, but that looks interesting. Oh, Gerald Trekkie, did you watch The Lives of Others? Yes. God, that's a great movie. Lives of Others is a fantastic movie. Absolutely. If anybody has not seen The Lives of Others, I would highly recommend it. Serenium Geek, I thought Aquaman, I think I've seen one of the Aquaman episodes in Batman the Brave and the Bold. I haven't watched all of Brave and the Bold. I've watched partway through it, but I haven't watched every episode. But I have seen one of the Aquaman episodes. And yeah, I thought he was good. I think Batman Brave and the Bold is a good example of kind of what I was talking about earlier. If you can do a funny, lighthearted Batman and make it work, that's great. And I think that's what that show does. Like the Batman in Batman Brave and the Bold is basically the Silver Age Batman. It's very outlandish, very sci-fi oriented, very, lighthearted and leaning toward the comedic. And I think it works really well. And I think Aquaman is funny in that for sure. Doc Azrael. So Cody to ROH. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I've had this thing in the back of my head ever since the Cody thing started that is telling me this is all a work. He's not going anywhere. If he was going to WWE, he would have shown up by now. I mean, WrestleMania is a month away. If Cody was going to WWE and they really had these big plans for him and they were going to push him to the moon, like he would be there by now. So But I don't know that. Like, that's just like that's just a part of my brain that's going like, come on, this isn't work, right? So is he going to jump to ROH and that'll be he left All Elite Wrestling to join Ring of Honor, even though they're both owned by the same guy now? Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe he will end up jumping to WWE, as weird and unthinkable as that sounds. I have no idea. I really have no idea what's going on with Cody. But I will say there is enough doubt in my mind about the legitimacy of all of this that if Cody did somehow show up back in AEW or in Ring of Honor as an invader or something, like, it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me. But like I said, I don't know. Sam say, how do I feel about Batman and Harley Quinn? Oh my God, Batman and Harley in the Harley Quinn animated series on HBO Max is terrific, is really good. And again, really funny and funny in a different way than the Adam West Batman is, or that the Brave and the Bold animated Batman is. But yeah, I think Batman and Harley is very well done. Let me scroll back up here and find some of these questions that I may have missed. Another super chat. Sorry, John, I missed the other one. Fellowship of the Ring was 3 hours. Yes. Yes. Which is too long. Which is too long. Here's the thing, and I said this when Jason and I reviewed Return of the King on Late Seating. I think first of all, the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy should have been one movie called The Lord of the Rings, and that movie should have been 2 hours long. The fact that it is 3 movies that are like 3 hours apiece, and those are just the theatrical cuts, never mind those ridiculous extended cuts that they released on DVD. The fact that it took that long to tell that story is absurd. 1 2-hour movie is all you need for that story. And it's all that story warrants to me. So yeah, you're right. Fellowship of the Ring is 3 hours, and that's insane. Kurok 2011 wants to know, did I ever watch the original V? That was when it was originally on. I was really young, so I don't remember much of it. I remember like the reveals when they would pull the skin off and they'd be reptilian underneath, but I really don't remember much about it other than that. And I haven't gone back and watched any of it, either the series or the mini series that came before it. Like, I haven't watched any of it as an adult, so I don't really remember it. But I remember it being on, and I remember watching some of it. I think maybe my dad or my mom was watching it, and I was watching it with them, but I didn't really retain a lot of it. CMAC, you know what? You can have the extended cuts, buddy. I hope you and the extended cuts are very happy together, but I think I've made my feelings quite clear. I think I've made my feelings about the Lord of the Rings quite clear. It should have been 1 2-hour movie about Frodo and Sam trying to get the ring to them. The only parts of any of those movies that I gave even remotely a shit about was the Frodo and Sam stuff. Everything else, every time they cut away to something else, I was like, who gives a shit? Why are we watching this? I don't care. This is not the story. The story is Frodo and Sam and Gollum. You know, like that was the movie. That was the story. Everything else is just horse shit that was thrown on top that means nothing, that has nothing to do with anything, that's just burning up running time. Fuck that. I would lose all of that. Cameron Rodwell says, do I prefer Michael Gough or Michael Caine as Alfred? I prefer Michael Caine because his movies were better. Michael Gough was very good as Alfred. I don't mean to disparage his performance at all, but Michael Caine was Alfred in the best Batman movie ever, The Dark Knight. And he was good as Alfred in that and had some very memorable scenes as Alfred in that. So I would go Michael Caine, but no disrespect meant at all to Michael Gough. Yes, Gerald Trekkie, I did know that V was based on It Can't Happen Here. Yeah, absolutely. Which is a great book, by the way, if anybody has not read that. CMAX says Aragorn's story is half the books. Yeah, but it's dumb. It's boring. I don't give a shit. I don't care what's in the books. If I was adapting those books, the first thing I would do is not adapt like 3/4 of those books. I don't give a shit. Oh, John Burns, I've seen that. John Burns with another super chat says, Tom Selleck stars as Eisenhower and Ike Countdown to D-Day. Check it out. I hope you enjoy it. I haven't watched that for a long time, but I remember watching it when it was originally on. That aired as a TV movie on A&E, and I watched it when it was on, and I remember really liking it. Tom Selleck would not be my first choice to play General Eisenhower. But I thought he did a good job, and I thought that was a very good movie. So I thank you for reminding me of that. I did watch it back in the day, and I did really enjoy it. Pedro says, do you like the Question as a character? A superhero conspiracy theorist is cool but controversial. Do you think he fits in the serious Batman universe or in James Gunn's DC? Well, I think he would definitely fit in a James Gunn movie. I think James Gunn would know exactly how to play that. I think he could fit in a serious Batman universe too. Again, it all depends on the approach. I think I am not someone who gets too hung up or too precious about, oh, would a given character work in a given universe? I think if you... And I haven't written it yet, but my video for Wednesday of this coming week is going to be about why the Batman live action movies are so afraid to use Robin, and why I think that's, why that's silly, why that's a silly concern, why I think it's completely possible to use for Robin to work in a serious live action Batman movie, just like it would be possible for a character like the Question to work in a serious live action Batman movie. But I have a lot of faith in James Gunn after his Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. I think he would know exactly what to do with a character like the Question. Super chat from Kirek 2011. He says, Steve, my next NYPD rewatch, I'm now in season 5 and I'm hesitant to continue because I know what happens in season 6. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the episode Lost Israel parts 1 and 2? I think that is a great episode. It's basically like an NYPD Blue movie. The story, the scope of it. In fact, I think one of the parts was originally aired as like a 90-minute special episode. Lost Israel is one of the best episodes the show ever did, I think. I really, really like it. And one of my favorite moments from Sipowicz when they have the guy who they suspect of being I don't want to spoil anything in case anybody hasn't seen NYPD Blue and wants to watch the episode, but there's the guy that they suspect is the killer, right? And he's in the police station, sort of asking them, and he doesn't know that they suspect him. And Sipowicz kind of pushes a little too hard to try and get the guy to come back in so that they can talk to him again. And then after the guy leaves, Sipowicz worries that he gave it away, like that he accidentally tipped the guy off that they were suspecting him. And Sipowicz has this moment where he almost has like a breakdown. Like he goes over to the window and is kind of breathing heavy and has to calm himself down. And he's like, I screwed this up. I let him know I liked him. Liked him as a suspect. And it's such a great scene and such a great acting moment from Dennis Franz. I've always loved that. So yeah, Lost Israel is a great episode. 255 AD says, should Superman throw all the climate change into the sun? Yeah, if he can figure out how to do it, if he can suck up all the greenhouse gases with his super breath and just blow them into space, or what I mean? Or not all of them. You don't want to lose all of them, but remove enough so it's no longer a dangerous amount and spew it into space. Yeah, do that. That would be great. Geraldo Trekkie says, if we talk about the sexiest Batman, who is the cutest Batgirl? Yvonne Craig, Alicia Silverstone, or one of the drawn ones? And who is the most competent Batman, Batgirl, or Robin? I think you got to go Yvonne Craig. All due respect to Alicia Silverstone, but she didn't really have much to work with in Batman and Robin. And also, she's Batgirl in a movie titled Batman and Robin. Such disrespect. But no, Yvonne Craig. Yvonne Craig is the best Not just the cutest, but the best live action Batgirl. Doc Ezra says, what if Gary Oldman was cast as Alfred instead of Commissioner Gordon? Now, that is interesting. That is interesting. I mean, he's an excellent actor. I'm sure he could pull it off. Yeah, I've honestly never thought of that before. John Burns, yes, Zack Snyder did make the Watchmen movie, and I did think that was a good movie. Yes, that is the only Zack Snyder movie that I thoroughly enjoy. And I think it's mostly a case of Zack Snyder not screwing up the source material. He kept very close to the source material, and I don't think he understood all of it. And there are some Zack Snydery bits in the movie that I don't think that I think are the parts that don't work. But I think overall, yeah, I think the Watchmen is definitely Zack Snyder's best movie. 285 AD says, even if it's unjust, do you need to make some concessions to Russia just to resolve the situation? Like if ending this less embarrassing for Putin saves lives. No, I'm completely on board with that. Yeah, I mean, as upsetting as it would be, because Putin is completely to blame for this. Like, if conceding something to him, that allowed him to save face would end the war more quickly and save lives, I would not complain about that. No, I mean, it's a shitty situation already. You're not going to find a perfect solution. So no, I don't have a problem with that at all. Super chat from Kirak 2011 says, not spoiling anything, but Lost Israel, I love that scene when they catch the right guy, and Simone says he asks him to shoot him, and Sipowicz says he asked the wrong guy. I love that moment. I tear up during that episode. I like that moment too. And yeah, it's a really, really good episode. Like I said already, it's one of the best episodes the show ever did. And that is saying something for me because that's one of my favorite shows. Radical Bacon. No, I have not watched Philosophy Tube's new video yet. I want to, but I haven't had a chance to see it yet. Derogatory Trekkie. Yes, I did watch Sledgehammer back in the day. I don't have a favorite episode because it's been too long since I've seen it. I don't really remember individual episodes, but yeah, I remember watching it and liking it a lot. Derogatory Trekkie also says, I think the Nolan movies are overrated, but then some people want to watch the world burn. I think Batman Begins is overrated. I think Batman Begins is really overrated. I think Batman Begins is a fine movie, but I don't think it's like a great movie. I remember when Batman Begins first came out, everybody was just losing their minds over. They're like, oh, finally, a good Batman movie. This is great. This is the movie I've always wanted to. I went to see it and I was like, okay. I mean, now The Dark Knight, I think, is a masterpiece. The Dark Knight is still, I think, the best Batman movie, period. But this new one that I just saw today is maybe like the Dark Knight is here, then the new one is like right there, right? It's not like right up against it, but it's like right there. Very good. But no, I don't think the Dark Knight is overrated. Actually, and I think Dark Knight Rises might be a little underrated because I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's nearly and it definitely has problems, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as a lot of people think it is. It's kind of like the Spider-Man 3 of the Nolan franchise, where it's like, okay, it has problems. It's not as good as the one that came before. It's too long. It's clunky. It's got a lot wrong with it, but at the end of the day, it works for me more than it doesn't, so. But no, but I'll go with you as far as Batman Begins. I think Batman Begins is grossly overrated by a lot of people. Radical Bacon, I have seen Encanto. Actually, on a whim, I just watched Encanto like 2 days ago. I know Dana had seen it and was talking about it with me a little bit a while back. And just 2 weeks ago, or almost 2 weeks ago, the last time Jason and I recorded podcasts, he was talking with me about it. In fact, we might have talked about it during the patron only section of Late Seating that we record just for Let Me Finish or Let Me Listen podcast patrons. That's sort of like the extended uncut version of Late Seating. I think we talked about it for that, and he recommended it very highly to me, and I was looking for something to watch a few nights ago, and was clicking around and went to Disney Plus, and I thought, well, shit, I'll just watch Encanto. So I watched it, and I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't think it was, and it's probably nothing that I'm gonna feel compelled to watch again, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. So, no problem, no issues, no problems with Encanto. I thought it was good. Couple of more super chats from Kirak 2011. Says, now changing the tone, what are your thoughts of Alabama now allowing people to carry and conceal without a permit? Well, I mean, I think that's nuts. I am very much an anti-gun person and a pro-gun control person. I think permitless concealed carry is insane. So I'm not in favor of that at all. And also another super chat from Kirak 2011 says, and hey, I love Batman Begins. Well, so did a lot of people. So, you're in good company. Geralta Trekkie asks, concerning the latest Batman, I fear we'll never get a true fun Batman movie a la Adam West anymore, but does the Matt Reeves vehicle have at least some fun scenes? I don't know if, not fun in the Adam West sense, not fun as in like lighthearted and campy and funny, but there are some action scenes that are exciting and fun in a serious way, if that makes sense. Like there's a car chase at one point that is really well done and is fun, but it's also very dramatic and very serious. Like there's not a lot of light moments in the movie. There's not a lot of, there's not like comic relief or jokes or anything. There are a couple of kind of funny exchanges between characters, but nothing like laugh out loud, like rip-roaringly funny. So it's not fun in that sense. But like one of the things I did really like about it was, even though it is a serious and dark movie, it's not grim. It's not super angsty, as I said when I was talking about it earlier. It's not depressing. It doesn't seem to revel in the violence or the darkness or the grittiness. It strikes a really good balance, I think. But it is a very serious movie. It's not what I would call it's definitely not a fun movie at any point, like the Adam West version. 255 AD is, I did know that about not wanting to use the term Dark Ages, and I said Dark Ages just out of habit. But thank you for the reminder that modern historians tend to use early Middle Ages instead of Dark Ages. Serena Geek, Lego Batman might be better than Dark Knight Rises. Lego Batman was a good movie. Lego Batman was a good movie. I think I probably would say it was better than Dark Knight Rises. But I still think Dark Knight Rises is not a bad movie. And Dark Knight Rises might still have, in fact, I think it does, has my favorite final shot of a Batman movie, my favorite closing shot of a Batman movie. One of my favorite closing shots of any superhero movie. Yes, Geraldo Trekkie, yes, no Batusi. No Batusi. Michael Handeline says, if you produced a Batman movie, what would it look like? It would probably look a lot like the one I saw today, actually. And like, it would be, my model in my head for the longest time, my reference that I would sort of make if when I thought about, like, if I made a Batman movie, what would my Batman movie be like? It would be a lot like the movie Seven, only probably not that dark at this point. When I was like a teenager and a young adult, it was more like, because I think I was 17 when Seven came out, and I think Seven is a great movie, and I really like it to this day. But at this point in my life, I probably would not, if I were doing a Batman movie, it probably would not be as dark or grim as Seven. I would want to inject a little bit more hope into it than Seven has. But aesthetically, I think it would probably be close to Seven. You know, there would be a sense of like a city in ruin, a city in decay, a city out of control, corruption, etc. You know, it would be visually not dark in the sense that everything would be black and inky and muddy, but subdued, you know. And then maybe, but you know, if depending on who the villain was, like if I had like a Joker, maybe I would make my Joker very bright to contrast with the darkness of Batman and the darkness of the general world. But it would be, my Batman movie would probably be pretty serious and pretty dark, but it would also show a Batman who is human, you know, and who acted not just to beat up criminals, but to help people and to protect people. You know, it would be a fairly dark take, but not super, super grim. Yes, like if you haven't seen Seven is a really good movie. It's very, very dark and very bleak. And if that's not your kind of thing, if that's not your cup of tea, you might not like it. But Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt are fantastic in it. And it's a really, really well-directed movie, directed by David Fincher. And I highly, highly recommend it, but it may not be everybody's cup of tea. Sam Say mentions the Zodiac movie. Yeah, and the Zodiac movie is also really good. Zodiac is an excellent movie. And yeah, I could kind of see I could see a Batman movie in that style working very well. Yeah. Sereno Geek asks, what was your first R-rated film? I don't remember. What was the first R-rated film? I remember the first R-rated film I ever went to see in a theater, I think, was Speed with Keanu Reeves, which is still one of my favorite action movies. I love Speed. But that was not the first R-rated movie I ever watched. But I can't remember what the first R-rated movie I ever watched was. But the first one I actually went to see in a theater was Speed. And I went to see that with my pap. My grandfather took me to see that. We sat in the theater together and watched Speed, and it was great. Yes, CMAC, thank you. Yes, Kevin Spacey is in Seven as well, so be prepared for that. Be prepared. Oh, there's that horrible person in the movie. Just, yeah, be ready for that. And yeah, Knit and Crochet Tiger, I agree with you as far as when you say no more Joker, please start using some of the underused villains. I understand going back to the Joker again and again because he is such a major antagonist to Batman. It's a little bit like doing Superman without doing Lex Luthor. So I get going back to the Joker and reinventing the character. But yeah, there are so many Batman villains that either have never been featured in a live action movie or have only been featured in a live action movie in a way that was not very good. You know, I would love to see someone try to do. I would love to see someone take another shot at Mr. Freeze. I would hate to think that the Schwarzenegger Batman and Robin version is the only live action big screen Mr. Freeze we're ever gonna get. I would love to see someone do Clayface. I would love to see a live action Batman movie do Clayface because there are so many different things you can do with that character. There have been so many different versions of Clayface you can pick and choose from. It would be fantastic. I would love, and you could do, you know, explore the weird side and maybe the slightly more fantastic side, but still do like a dark, serious story just with some fantastic elements to it. Like I really think a Clayface would be great. Someone in the chat mentioned Poison Ivy, which again, has only been done in Batman and Robin, and could be a great character if done seriously. Lady Shiva, you know, King Snake. Like there are so many great Batman villains that have never been seen in a live action movie. That would be great. The ventriloquist. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I would love to see the live action Batman movies diversify the rogues gallery a little bit more. Oh, Doc Azrael. No, I have not seen Guardians of Justice, so I can't comment. I'm sorry. I know you keep asking. I have not seen Guardians of Justice. Anarchy, yes. Mac Deems, Anarchy, yes. That's another one. Kirak 2011 says, "Come on, that was a funny joke. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age." What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age. I also loved Cool Party. And what else? You're not putting me in the cooler. Calendar Man, sure, Calendar Man. John Burns says, "What about Bat Geely? Would you like that? Not if it wasn't better than Geely." Condiment King, yes, the mighty Condiment King. Yeah, so Random Geek, Killer Croc is another one. Yeah, Killer Croc has never been done properly in a live action movie for sure. Hugo Stroh Pedro, that's a good one. Hugo Strange for sure. Yes, absolutely. Kemp, yeah, Batmite. I like I said, the lighter, the sillier characters can work if given the proper treatment. I would be open to seeing a Batmite show up in a movie for sure. Gerald Trekkie, Schwarzenegger as the Borg King. I am the Terminator. I am the Borg. Yeah, for sure. But yes, Hugo Strange might have just gone to the top of my list because Hugo Strange is Man Bat. Yeah, Man Bat would be good. But yeah, Hugo Strange would work really well, I think, in the kind of movie that I just saw in the new Batman movie, because he's fairly down to earth, but at the same time, there are stories from Hugo Strange that you can adapt that do go a little bit more out there and get more outlandish and weird, but weird in ways that I think could be adapted to work with the tone that Matt Reeves sets for this version of Batman. So, and plus, Hugo Strange is one of the earliest Batman villains. Like Hugo Strange goes back to the early days. I think like he was a year one villain, like 1939 year one. Was Hugo Strange. He was one of the first villains that Batman ever faced in the comics. So I'm always a big fan of bringing Hugo Strange back. Yes. Correct 2011 with a super chat says, Schwarzenegger is a very underrated actor. Take Twins, for example. Oh, for sure. Schwarzenegger is terrific. Schwarzenegger has developed into a quite a good actor, actually, with more range than he is generally given credit for. Yeah. Solomon Grundy, absolutely, Pedro. Solomon Grundy for sure. Duralta Trekkie, the Floronic Man, yeah. They kind of they did like a half-assed Floronic Man for Ivy's origin story in Batman and Robin, but they could, actually do a proper one if they wanted to, for sure. But anyway, it's after 8, everybody, so I'm going to start wrapping up. So first of all, don't forget the charity links that our pal Some Random Geek maintains for us, that are linked in the description of the video. Help out some friends of ours that need a helping hand. Charitylinks.page is the address, and it'll take you to a Google Doc where you can find links to PayPals and fundraisers and such for folks in need. Please consider helping out with that. Also, don't forget Dana's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Dana Cole Dares. And also Dana has a Patreon, patreon.com/Dana Cole Dares, that you can go to if you want to support her work on her channel. And don't forget that Dana, tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time on her channel, has a live stream, the next edition of the Saturday 6, where she shares 6 items of good news from the past 2 weeks. She's been doing it for the last several weeks now. It's always a good show, and I'm looking forward to it, and I will be watching, and I will be in the chat, so hopefully some of you will join us for that as well. So tomorrow night at 6 on Dana's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Dana Cole Dares. And also, if you want to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or click the join button to become a channel member. Patreon patrons and channel members at all levels get to submit questions ahead of time for Ask Away live streams. So those questions I was answering in the first part of the show all come from patrons and members. So if that seems like something you want to do and you're not a patron or a member, you can become a patron or a member at any level. $1 a month on up to whatever you can afford and whatever you think I'm worth. And I really appreciate it. I could not do this without you as my supporters. So to everyone who is a financial supporter of this channel, I appreciate it. And for everyone who is thinking of becoming a financial supporter of the channel, I would encourage you to do so if you can afford it and if you think I'm worth it. Also, don't forget, if you like my YouTube stuff, you should also be listening to the podcasts that I co-host with the great Jason Harding. There is Late Seating, the movie review podcast, where we take a look at classic films and give them a fresh review and decide whether or not they deserve their reputations, be they good or bad. The most recent episode is our review of Downfall. And then there is also the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I am on alongside Jason and also Dana, where we play low-ranking officers serving aboard currently the TNG Enterprise. We are getting close to the end of our 4th season. We're not quite there yet, but our new episode just went up today. So hopefully, if you haven't listened to it, you will. And if you haven't listened to any of the Ensign's Log at all, I would encourage you to do so, because if you dig the Star Trek related stuff I do here on YouTube, you'll really, really like the Ensign's Log. I think it's a lot of fun, and we have a good time making it. And hopefully, if you listen to it, you have a good time listening to it. So one last super chat from Kirok 2011. Says, really curious, what will you do when the member questions exceed 2 hours? Hopefully that, if the member, here's the thing, if the member questions exceed 2 hours, hopefully that means that my Patreon and member income has increased substantially, because I have that many more patrons and members who want to ask questions. And if that's the case, I'd be happy to keep going if there are that many people that want to ask questions and that want to keep, to keep watching for that long. So I would extend the show if there was a demand for it, and if it was paying the bills. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. This is a lot of fun for me, and as long as people watching are willing to stick around and watch all of it, or subsidize the channel and ask the questions, that would be fine with me. But 2 hours just for member questions would be kind of a lot. But like I say, I would not be opposed to doing it if it corresponded to a massive bump in my income. So anyway, that's it, everybody. Thank you so much. Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the chat tomorrow on Dana's YouTube channel for her show, and then I'll see you next week for more fun. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.